Despite another easy matchup for Penn State in this non-conference schedule, the Nittany Lions still have a lot to prove against FIU.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State football, and as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. Another preview ahead of Penn State versus FIU. We're going to discuss this potential move to Adidas, and why Penn State fans and everybody else that supports Penn State should like this move. But we're going to go through a game day checklist for Penn State. What to watch for the Nittany Lions, including was the passing attack of Fluke in week 1 against Nevada, and what to expect at the main position of concern right now, defensive end, because I'm telling you, Florida International will challenge that group. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is right here. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. And again, friendly reminder to let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. So let's begin with what to watch for when it comes to the Nittany Lions in this game against FIU. Penn State is a 41.5 point favorite, 53.5 on the total. We're going to talk about stat and score predictions as well later on in the show to go officially on the record with this one. But I'm watching defensive end first and foremost because FIU is a speedy team. They go up tempo, but it's not so much about that. It's the way they utilize that speed. It's the way they utilize that tempo. So for the Panthers case, this is a team that has the preseason conference favorite in Kaytron Jenkins at quarterback. This is a guy that can move, and this is a guy that can also hand the football off to not one, not two, but 3 different running backs. So why I bring up defensive end is because of the injury to Zuriah Fisher. We know that he is a go for this week against the Panthers. However, he's going to be limited. So that means Chaz Coleman is probably going to play at least 20 snaps. Maybe he does get to that 30 snap threshold that James Franklin talked about in week 1. But Chaz Coleman, Yvonne Kamaju, Malachi Williams, Jalen Harvey are going to get a steady rotation in at defensive end. We'll see if there's anybody else that gets involved as well in the 3 deep. Who knows, maybe the 4 deep. But those are the primary 4 to watch after Dennis Sutton and Zuriah Fisher. So why I bring them up is because they need those reps. They need that experience. They need to build that discipline. Okay, FIU is going to run option plays. They are going to run RPO plays, meaning that defensive ends have to stay home. They have to stay disciplined. They have to be able to read the play accordingly. So if Zuriah Fisher is going to be on a snap count, once again, a strict one at that, I'm also eager to see, how does Zuriah Fisher look going into this game? We have not seen him play a lot of football for a long time. How's it going to look shaking off the rust in against a team that is going to challenge your speed, your agility? So, and again, this is a lower body leg injury that he's been dealing with for quite some time. So I don't expect too much from Zuriah Fisher because of the limited playing time that he's going to have. So it's really up to Chaz Coleman. Can he get his first career sack? Can Kamaju do that? Again, Jalen Harvey, Malachi Williams, what can they do? Because I really do think the freshman defensive ends are, at least the way that we've talked about them over the course of the offseason, training camp, they are in a better position to be those immediate backups right now to Dennis Sutton and Fisher respectively. So that's the battle. Is it Kamaju and Coleman, or is it Harvey and Williams who are going to be those immediate backups? Keep an eye on defensive end based on production and the way that just the depth rolls in and out of the game. But FIU is going to keep them on their toes. Know that much. That's why I highlight the DN spot. I want to talk about the offensive line and the ground game because apparently this is a concern. It's not for me because I know that Penn State has the best backfield in the country, the best tandem, the best dynamic duo between Singleton and Allen. But because they didn't absolutely throttle Nevada on the ground, then that brings up a massive concern for some, not for everybody. I think there's still people like me who are always going to be glass half full with this group by nature. Okay, they brought back all of that entire group, that entire core is back from a season ago, and we saw them at their best. So just because they have one bad game or one not so good game against Nevada does not define and say, well, this is a sign of things to come for the Nittany Lions and for Singleton, for Allen, for the offensive line. I still want to watch it. I still want to watch this group in particular, because how soon do you correct those mistakes? You know that you didn't have your best performance against Nevada. You didn't really light up the box score, and they don't necessarily have to against FIU. But I am expecting this. I am expecting more attention to the ground game. Singleton and Allen were held to 8 carries apiece respectively by game plan, by game script, the way the game unfolded. I mean, Nevada wanted Penn State to pass the football, and there was initiative. So it was kind of a double up there a week ago. Now, I wonder if Florida International is going to be a little more keen on trying to limit Kyron Hudson, limit Trevor Pena. Is the offensive line, even though it's just one tweak, it's Anthony Donko moving into that guard spot, you still have to build the chemistry on game day. James Franklin acknowledged this. FIU is actually a little larger in terms of size on the defense in that front seven. So the offensive line should be tested a little more here, but this is a get back game for them. I think there's going to be more attention to the ground game, trying to get Singleton and Allen more carries, probably in that 12 to 15. It doesn't seem like a lot, but 12 to 15 carries respectively is certainly an appropriate number for them, because the way that FIU wants to speed things up offensively, how do you counter that? You slow it down on your side of the ball. So when you are in control, when you have your possession for Penn State, you want to go slow. You want to have 10, 12, 15 play drives and give your defense a break, because it's going to be rapid fire on the other side of things for the Panthers. So if you're the Nittany Lions, you want to control the time of possession. You really want to keep FIU's offense out of rhythm. And how do you do that with one of the best offensive lines in the country and one of the best backfields in the country, objectively running and dictating this game? Injured players. So I already mentioned Zuriah Fisher. Of course, we're going to circle him, but Quentin Martin, he was back at practice, but he was with the scout team. He's in that RB3 competition. Zion Tracy, is he going to start this week, or is it going to be Kenny Wosley again? So that's what I'm looking for. Players that, at Devontae Ross, there was, at least from James Franklin, he went and admitted, hey, we want to get Ross a little more involved here, despite the limitations over the course of the offseason with his health. Are we going to see that? How involved is Fisher going to be? How involved is Tracy going to be? How involved is Ross going to be? And what are they going to contribute? So it's not only about their involvement, but what will they contribute when they are shaking off a little bit of rust? Hey, despite the competition, this FIU team is not as much of a pushover as you would think they are. That is just how dominant Penn State is expected to be this season. A 41-point spread again with Nevada one week and then FIU the next. The Panthers at least have respectable talent on the other side of the football. And I'm not saying that Nevada doesn't at all, period, but FIU has more of it. I like their coaching staff a little more in Willie Simmons as the new head coach, coming over from Duke originally with this past season, and then Florida A&M, where he was a really effective head coach. But this is an FIU team that will challenge you with its tempo, with its speed, and select star players that can give you some headaches. So the injured players, I want to see Tracy, because there are high expectations for Tracy. Fisher, all of them alike going into the season. Quentin Martin, because it's such a crowded backfield, I don't think there's as lofty expectations, but he was my choice to win, all things considered, that RB3 competition. But now Cam Wallace continues to push, right? So it'll be intriguing what those injured players, formerly injured players, ultimately contribute here on game day. Now the passing attack. Trevor Pena, Kyron Hudson led the way against Nevada. But was it a fluke? Was it because that was an easy matchup, an easy opponent? We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, and it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered. Powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, where you can save more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. I can't just go with one for Penn State. I got to go with two different players, but from the same position group. Trevor Pena and Kaytron Hudson. When the pressure was on, they both came through. No hesitation, no delay. Trevor Pena, Kaytron Hudson showed that the wide receiver room has significantly improved. And if you've been watching so far this season and following along, this week's performance was not fluke. And just like how Hudson and Pena delivered for Penn State, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it all up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period is through November 18th. And this episode is also brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply just move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every single detail. As an athlete focuses on every detail as well, Mazda does the same, from metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather. You can feel it the moment you get behind the wheel. The smooth handling, intuitive controls, and standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. So whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes even everyday drives feel special. It's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. That's Mazda. Mazda, move and be moved. Still to come on this episode, I'm going to explain why you should like the move to Adidas. 300 million reasons why you should like the move, the switch from Nike to Adidas for Penn State. Let's continue with this game day checklist of what you should be watching for in Penn State versus FIU. The passing game. Was it a fluke? Was it a sign of things to come? I say a sign of things to come. There was not only an initiative, the matchup was there for Penn State because Penn State's wide receivers, Kaytron Hudson and Trevor Pena, respectively, were better than Nevada's corners. But the point being is that Andy Kotelnicki doesn't have to do all these different things schematically to open up the passing attack for Kaytron Hudson, Trevor Pena, and eventually Devontae Ross to be successful. These guys are self-sufficient. So they can run their routes and win their one-on-one reps more often than not, because as you get into Big Ten competition, as you play Oregon or Ohio State, that's going to get a little more difficult. But the problem was in those elite matchups, the wide receivers formerly for Penn State weren't winning them at all. They were going 0 for 100. They weren't winning those one-on-ones. But now you see the confidence from Drew Aller in Hudson, in Pena, and eventually Devontae Ross, where they win those one-on-ones enough to continue to give Penn State that confidence. It opens up so many things for Penn State offensively. Having Kaytron Hudson, having, again, Hudson, Ross, and Pena, having that trio of wide receivers opens up the run game, gives Aller more confidence. It also allows Andy Kotelnicki to go deeper into the playbook, which is why you're going to see, hey, potentially 4 tight end sets. You'll definitely see 3 tight end sets, 7 offensive line sets, 7 offensive lineman sets. We saw that against Nevada. Kotelnicki was not afraid to break that out immediately. But I mentioned the tight ends here. Well, the tight ends actually get involved more. Maybe this week, maybe not this week. Eventually they will, because they will have to. Defenses are going to start to devote more resources to trying to take away a Hudson or a Pena. They shade a linebacker into the slot. Maybe they double up on Hudson with some safety help, or the same thing with Ross. That's where Penn State is going to be so much more successful on offense, is the variety of players that they can distribute the football to, including the running backs, Singleton and Allen. So eventually the tight ends will get there as well. Khalil Dinkins, Andrew Rapplier, we saw the play that he had later on in the game with Ethan Grunkemeyer, just a stiff arm, everything. He was able to create extra yardage after the catch. So we know that Reynolds, Dinkins, and Rapplier are all viable options in the passing attack, even though it will be primarily focused on Hudson and Pena first and foremost, and then eventually Ross. I'm telling you, Devontae Ross is going to be that big play. You want to talk about explosive plays. Devontae Ross is going to be that keep defenses honest deep down the field, which will open up the ground game as well. So the tight ends, yeah, Dinkins will get the football. Eventually, Luke Reynolds will get the football. Rapplier, from Ethan Grunkemeyer, okay, but any three of those players could rotate in at tight end, and you still get effective play out of the tight end spot when it comes to the passing game. Most importantly, Rapp and Dinkins are better at this. I think Reynolds is the furthest behind, not by a lot, but in terms of blocking, Dinkins and Rapp are better. And then Reynolds is still competent and capable in blocking schemes, but not as good as a Dinkins and Rapplier are. So that's the passing game itself. I want to see it evolve. I want it to be more than just Hudson Pena, Hudson Pena, Hudson Pena. How about a deep ball to Devontae Ross? How about some more throws out of the backfield to Singleton and Allen? You don't need to throw the kitchen sink at FIU. You don't need to open up the playbook extensively there. But how you already showed that 7 offensive lineman set, if you're Andy Kotelnicki, why not sprinkle in something else? That 3 running back look with Cam Wallace or Quentin Martin if he's good to go. Heck, if it's Corey Smith, that's fine by me. Some passing where you break out Singleton, you motion him out into the slot. Maybe some of that wildcat too. Now, I know I'm deviating away from the passing game, but just some of the other wrinkles that I'm expecting from Kotelnicki's playbook at some point in time, I want to see 1 to 2 of those more in there. But in the passing game, respectively, get the tight ends involved, get the running backs involved, do some other things just to kind of continue to build upon that. There could be inclement weather. That's something to just keep an eye on, that there is rain expected in the forecast over the course of the day, and maybe that clears up. I keep peeking in and out of my weather app. One day, hey, it's clear, it's sunny, it's 70 degrees. Oh, there's a little bit of rain in the forecast, 40, 50, 60% chance. There is a possibility of rain. I don't think it's going to be a downpour, so that's not going to change Penn State or FIU's game plan. But if there is rain, expect the football to stay on the ground. Don't expect it to go through the air. But that's also an opportunity in a game that's not as consequential, where you are favored the way you are. You can still pass and see what you can do when the elements aren't exactly on your side. James Franklin has talked about that. They like practicing in inclement weather. So stat and score expectations for this game. If it does rain all afternoon, you should probably expect this game to go under that total of 52.5. And FIU to probably cover that spread of, 41.5 points is a lot. We saw Nevada with the backdoor cover, and we kind of called that here on this show, talking about, hey, when the reserves are in the game, Nevada FIU is going to do the same thing, where they're going to stay up tempo. They're going to push the pace. They're going to go quick. The starters are going to stay in longer for the Panthers as opposed to the Nittany Lions. So it would not shock me here if FIU ends up pulling off that backdoor cover. But I do think the matchup favors Penn State overall. I said 56-14 originally, and again, I will stick with that score prediction. I just think that Penn State, because they run the ball, they can run the ball effectively. FIU will keep up that pace. They very well might score that 3rd touchdown later on in the game. Again, inclement weather definitely affects the total here. But Drew Aller, in the first game, had over 200 passing yards. I think that's fair. Again, maybe he gets 2 passing touchdowns here in this case. I do think Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen have more activity in this game, somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 carries apiece. You double up on that workload, meaning that they should both get to, if they're going to average about 5 yards per carry, then they should get to that threshold of 80, 90, maybe even 100 yards apiece. Singleton had 2 touchdowns on the day. Allen had 1 when they played Nevada. It's safe to say that they're each going to get a touchdown themselves on the ground. I think that Hudson and Pena won't see as many targets, because now you're going to try to have a focus to get the ball to the tight ends a little more. Devontae Ross, if they intend to, this is a game to get Devontae Ross involved as well. So there's going to be a little more equal distribution of targets and not just a total focus on 2 players here in the passing attack. On defense, Denai Dennis Sutton should have another phenomenal day. whether that's in the form of multiple sacks or tackles for loss or turnovers forced. But it really should be a status quo type of situation. Also, Penn State's going to sell out for the run. So if they're able to control the ground game and FIU has to put the football in the air, you should expect multiple interceptions from this defense. Zach Wheatley getting there. Antoine Belgrave shorter as that new starting strong safety. Maybe he gets his first career interception in this game. So that's what I'm looking for as far as stat and score predictions here going up between Penn State and FIU. All right, we'll put that to the side because a big headline that people are very vocal about on social media, Penn State potentially switching from Nike to Adidas. It seems weird, but Penn State has 300 million reasons, and you should too, as to why this move makes a lot of sense. We're going to talk about it next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. This episode is brought to you by Upside. Hey, Nittany Lion fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Well, stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code FOOTBALL and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, I thought this was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or any gift card for places like Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code FOOTBALL for a limited time 25 cent per gallon bonus. That is promo code FOOTBALL. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. FanDuel makes every game more exciting. Whether you're watching your favorite team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup, it's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays and even your Saturdays as well. Penn State football plays FIU this weekend. If you're interested in those game lines, they are up and available on FanDuel right now. Penn State is a hefty favorite, 41.5 points on the spread. The total is set at 53.5. If you like those lines, you can bet them over at FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. And new customers, remember, if you bet just $5, you will get $300 in bonus bets if that first bet wins over at FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. Penn State switching from Nike to Adidas. We all should like the move because it helps Penn State in this competitive era of NIL, the transfer portal, just the way that college football, college sports in general are. Penn State, the alleged agreement that has to be voted on the board by the Board of Trustees for Penn State is a 10-year, $300 million agreement. Okay, so that's not all going to NIL. Let me start with that. But a strong portion of it, this is why Penn State is going away from Nike, is because Adidas, they already showed it with Tennessee. This is why it's reported. This is how it was originally reported. Tennessee is getting a strong contribution to its NIL efforts from Adidas. So in this day and age, with the way that college athletics are, the move is strategic. The move makes sense. It is strange going away because Penn State has been thought of as a Nike school. I also want to point out, this has been brought up by other people, but this thought popped into my mind as well. Phil Knight, Nike, okay? Those two are together for obvious reasons, right? Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, but he's also the biggest donor for one of the most competitive teams in your conference. Penn State doing this isn't the exact reason, but it's a subtle reason. I think it's in the back of the mind of Pat Kraft that millions of dollars are going to one of our biggest competitors right now in Oregon. Why should we be funding the enemy, so to speak? The move to Adidas, and I don't think from a brand apparel standpoint, it's simply optics. Okay, everybody wants to dunk on Adidas, but they're not a bad apparel brand. I think Adidas is actually making the right move by changing their objective to say, we are going to have a strong influence on college athletics. By doing so, Adidas is smart. They're playing chess out here by saying that we're going to help fund NIL initiatives. And then that way you are now starting to stack some of the biggest brands in terms of colleges, in terms of universities, Tennessee, Penn State, getting long-term agreements with them. This is a benefit. And then Adidas, again, if you have any qualms with Adidas, they can improve it because they are going to be in these financial agreements that take away from the likes of Nike or Under Armour, whomever else. And now Adidas really gets involved in this apparel battle. But they are smart to help fund NIL. And I see the concerns in recruiting, or the proposed concerns. Well, this means Penn State's going to lose recruits, commits, that this is a Nike school, the commits, the recruits, they all like Nike over Adidas. When that first NIL check clears, it's not going to matter. It is not going to matter whatsoever. I think commits and recruits will very much change their minds when they see Penn State and where they stand with NIL, as opposed to, well, there's a check mark on my jersey versus stripes on my jersey. I've been seeing some people who cover Penn State recruiting or recruiting in general just asking about this, asking around about it. And commits, some of them will strongly say, or recruits will strongly say, they're anonymous, but they say, yeah, it's interesting, but at the end of the day, it's not going to affect my commitment. It's not going to affect my recruitment. Some recruits have said, I don't prefer it. I don't like it. I have a preference for Nike. But when you have to be competitive the way that you do, when dollars matter, and Penn State has lost recruiting battles because they don't have the same kind of NIL offers as other schools, these are the moves that you need to make. They are necessary. I like this move a lot if it actually crosses the finish line. Or do you get a better deal from Nike? Because at the time of this recording, this is not official, but it is trending in that direction. So when the vote is actually approved and Penn State becomes an Adidas school, or do you get a better counter offer from Nike and you remain with that company? But again, it goes back to, I just don't like it from the Phil Knight Oregon component. Go with Adidas. The uniforms are not going to drastically change other than the logo. The apparel logo is the only difference. Penn State's still going to have the basic blues, black shoes, okay, the all-white uniforms. There's not going to be these radical changes with apparel, but I get the optics of it. I do. People were very vocal about it, so I thought I'd weigh in on Penn State switching its apparel provider. But it makes a ton of sense. $300 million over 10 years. It is well worth it, especially when Adidas is going to help contribute to NIL. They are essentially an NIL sponsor now for Penn State athletics when this deal becomes official. Hey, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Appreciate each and every one of you for checking out this episode. Thank you to the everydayers for making us your first listen and watch every single day. Become an everydayer if you are not one. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast for all the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams, whether it involves apparel or not, controversial deals. We're going to talk about everything. Penn State football, Penn State wrestling, recruiting, basketball, you name it. It is all right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.